what I think is a much more interesting question, because this introduces you to a very powerful and commonly used mechanism. How do we exit a loop? Now, there are several different ways, but what we're interested in is the idea that you've got some loop and some condition set up, and the code will run inside that loop, okay, and keep on endlessly running. But within the loop, you have either an input or some kind of calculation, some kind of statement to check, right? You change some value inside the loop, and then when it comes back around to loop, that condition has changed. So it exits the loop, it jumps out of the loop and follows the code further down the page. So this is a very, very commonly used practice. You have some condition, but within the loop you have a condition which can change the looping condition, and then you will leave. Okay, as an abstract question that might not make much sense to you, we're going to show you two mechanisms to do it. And I'm going to use a previous example of the age, asking for the age and calculating a discount, because that's quite a simple one, and hopefully you can see the concepts work. So here we are back here in our infinite loop. While true, this block, as we said before, will just endlessly repeat. We need to replace that condition, and what we're going to do with our first mechanism is we're going to create a Boolean loop switch variable, and we are going to set it to true. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that's a true false value. Boolean can only hold true or false. So if we replace this word inside the loop with this variable, I don't know if you can see where I'm going to go with this. If I leave the code as it is, that will infinitely repeat, because that loop switch will never stop being true. Now, what's interesting is please enter your age, or enter -1 to exit. So look at what I've changed to my prompt. If I say enter your age, or if you don't want to keep on looping, enter -1. We receive the age, and then we try to work out the discount. Now, we need to change our if statement, because if we get a -1, we need to do something slightly different. We don't need to calculate the age, we basically need to stop. So the way that we do it is we take that -1 and we put that inside our if statement. So the first one is going to be if age equals -1. So we have to decide what we're going to do if that's the case, but we need to tidy up the remaining conditions. What was the if statement now becomes an else if. So the very first thing I'm checking is if you've typed in -1. By taking in -1, what do I want to go there? What do I want to put there in order to stop this switch? Can you see what it would be? Well, that's a variable, and this, as long as it's true, it will carry on looping. So if I put loop switch in there and I set it to false, do you see what will happen in this code? Okay, it starts, it'll loop, it'll keep on looping as long as you don't enter -1. So it'll always check that within the, it's technically not working out the discount, it's just working stuff out, right? So we'll get rid of the word discount. It's just working stuff out based on your input. Now, if you put in -1, it switches that to false. And because this whole block of code is ifs and else ifs, let's just tidy this up. Then if that's true, it won't bother checking this. It'll set that to false, come back down here. Actually, that's a problem because we don't want a discount displayed, right? So that we would need to change that. Technically, we don't only want a discount to be displayed if it's not 1. Okay, so there are several ways that you can do this. And we'll have a look at how we can combine that in a second. So that will look a little bit odd standing there on its own, because if you type in -1, that switches it to false. We'll have to work out what to do with that line, but it comes back round to the loop. It's now false. It then exits that loop. Okay, so that's how the mechanism works, but we've still got this redundant line. So let me ask this as a challenge. What shall we do with it? Two things we can do with it. We could create a sort of sub block, a nested if statement. So we could have an else statement, and in that else statement we include this block here and that, right? If that made any sense. So let me just show you that in a minute. Or we could just put an if statement here, and we could say if loop switch is true, right, then output that line. Grab that, throw that inside there. Okay, now have a look at the logic of that. As long as loop switch is true, it's always going to output the discount. It's going to calculate the discount. But if it executes that because you put in -1, that will be false, so it won't output the discount. That's a nice little way of kind of combining those concepts. So shall we test that and see whether that works? Let's run it. I'll give it a second. Down here, please enter thing or enter -1 to exit. So let's just do the normal. Yeah, so the discounts all seem to be working. Let's put in a -1 and the program finishes. And we've exited the loop. So that is one mechanism you can do. The other is called using a break statement. And because, for sake of completion, I should show it to you. So I am going to show it to you in this way, right? I'm going to revert that back to true, and I'm going to say, if you put -1 in, you break. Now, what that does, it has a huge advantage. If you look at the logic of this, there are advantages and disadvantages. If you put a break statement in here, it will simply exit the loop. It won't ever arrive at this line, so you no longer need to have that if statement. So that can just disappear. So that, you might say, oh, that's more efficient. That's only one little piece of code. The only disadvantage of a break statement here is that you have more control if you use a variable. By using a variable, you might have more complex, let's undo those changes. You might have more complex scenarios, bear with me a second as I just undo those changes, which aren't just related to -1, but could be other conditions. You could have nested conditions. Having a Boolean value which switches true and false can give you different types of control, but a break statement is another way to do it.